And I'll just start already just by introducing the IFTDays Circle. For those of you who are new to this community, we started in 2018 in Finland as a get-together of with a goal of bringing together science and practitioners and anyone wishing to get into the field of forest-based well-being practices. And we were able to have 2 events in Finland face-to-face with a seminar and a workshop day, and then a retreat or sort of an immersion day. But then in 2020, we held our event online, which worked out okay, but still our event or our idea is very much about bringing people together in real time. So we're hoping to someday be able to go back to that. We need to also keep going and building the network and making sure that there's hope and that we can build also after the crisis that is going on at the moment, and to be together in these trying times. It's also very important to create these spaces where we can come together. So that's why we're here. Together with Vitalia, my colleague, I would like to have you, Vitalia, say a couple of words as well from your point of view.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I think it's a long journey, at least it feels. Even Katrina, she said that we started in 2000, maybe 17, 18, I would say 2016, when we started to plant seeds with Katrina, with Belgian Biodiversity Platform and Belgian biodiversity and health practitioners, academics and policymakers. So it was maybe one plant that was growing into International Forest Therapy Days. And indeed, this 6 or more concretely 4 years, they've been very dense and very shaky. And we tried really to put diversity in front of this work, that we understand that people are very different, with very different cultural backgrounds, personal backgrounds, personal needs and collective needs. So our aim was really to create some events that allow to manifest this diversity of forest-based health and well-being practice. And just we explored the ways how different people can connect to nature or feel part of nature in different ways and through different practices. So this was always our work direction, this exploration of diversity. And indeed, through these uncertainties and world in which we live, we have to adapt continuously. So it's this community is also very in flux. It's changing all the time. Wendy is here. I really like this idea on which she works, becoming. I think we are all becoming personally and collectively all the time, and this project is also becoming. So it's really it's being held by volunteers. We don't have any financing resources, and it gives also some kind of freedom that we don't have restrictions. We can really respond to what is needed in the ground today and adapt in reflection to these needs. And today we felt that, it's time maybe to speak about nature prescriptions, because this term was around also for many years. Maybe some of you who are working a little bit closer in cultural sector, and especially in Anglo-Saxon culture and UK, they are speaking about social prescriptions and nature prescriptions for many years. it's also a little bit how policy was shaped in United Kingdom, that a lot of non-profit organizations who receive state subsidies been pushed and invited to work more on social cohesion and addressing health issues in cultural and nature sector. And I think this is how also this originated, this prescription, that there were early collaborations with the healthcare sector of cultural practitioners and social practitioners and nature conservation sector, and they managed, I think these prescriptions came as a fruit of this collaboration, as something quite concrete. And still we think that this is very undefined, what is this nature prescriptions and what we are aiming with. So that's why we came up with this invitation to gather in the circle and to see how we understand what this nature prescription is.
Yeah, good morning. Greetings from sunny Vienna. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for the invitation, Katrina. And I'm really looking forward to a fruitful discussion on this hot topic nowadays. In Austria, we have a kind of interesting situation because the nature-based solutions are currently more prone to be in the climate change mitigation sector. So if we talk about nature-based solutions, and we use this word also, we are German speaking, then people mostly mean that they want to increase green spaces in cities to make cities cooler. So this is really interesting because the different countries, and this is really also good to discuss with you, different countries have a different focus on green something, yeah. And for my profession, I am a medical doctor, and I'm specialized in public health, and I lead a subunit at the Medical University of Vienna that deals with green public health. So we created this fancy word to have some umbrella term for all green aspects that influence health and well-being. And one small part of this is, as Katrina mentions, biodiversity and health. Interestingly, biodiversity is also becoming a really huge topic these days because people recognize that we face a huge biodiversity loss. So if you are interested in policy and how research is working, I could share with you some interesting slides from the current call of the EU Commission on Nature-Based Solutions. Maybe this is also a really good framework to start how research and policy-framed research nowadays looks on this topic. As I said, there is currently a call which is not open anymore on developing nature-based therapy for health and well-being, and a lot of these 50-something proposals that have already been submitted to this call deal with our topic, because one of the major goals of this call is to promote prescribing health nature for well-being reasons from a more European and sometimes even global perspective with international partners. So the consortia that have sought out some proposals for this call are usually really huge, like 10 to 20 countries, which is really, really big effort. And from the policy context wise, you see the European Green Deal. I think most of you know that this was also a huge endeavor to put the nature in the center of the thinking for a lot of different aspects in the European Union. also the biodiversity strategies here highlighted because this is where we currently work a lot on. And also this field is extremely fast developing. So it's a huge pace, and you might see it also in your fields or in your country that there is a lot of things going on in how biodiversity could be the next hot topic for, let's say, the next decade. Even more interesting than climate change, which really striking if you think about how people perceive climate change and how hard it was to focus on climate change mitigation aspects in research and policy and in the public also. And now we have biodiversity, and we will also have to raise awareness on biodiversity and health and well-being. So I do not want to go into details, just to have a quick give a quick overview for you. And there is also a huge amount of money involved. So this is also the reason why a lot of people are involved, because you can get a lot of money out of from this research and also development and creating new technologies. Interestingly, a lot of the proposals in this call are also addressing artificial intelligence and machine learning. So the interdisciplinary aspects in how we solve these problems of our society and climate change and biodiversity and nature and health are also involving a lot of technology, which seems a little bit contradictory. On the one hand, you want to increase nature as it is, and on the other hand, you need a lot of technology to push forward these research topics. So from the official definition, you see that the nature-based solutions includes a lot of topics. As I told you before, in our country, or at least in Vienna, we see nature-based solutions mainly for the urban area. However, there are also really interesting things included as health and well-being and biodiversity enhancement and all these things. So when we talk about what is nature for health, it always needs a good and solid definition what the people mean, especially if people from different backgrounds and sectors and countries and languages talk with each other. So it's really good to have a definition in mind. And having such a broad topic like nature-based solutions could be an asset, but it is also could be a barrier, because if you are not exactly clear what you're talking about, you can go in a completely wrong direction and never meet your ends. So from this definition, it's interesting from my perspective that the nature-based solution must benefit biodiversity and support the delivery of a range of ecosystem services. So it's also biodiversity included here. And for most of us, the most interesting aspect is the societal aspect and the challenges for these solutions. So what do you think about this definition? Do you see yourself in one of these icons here? Is this definition new, or is this already known? I don't know. Any thoughts on this?
I know the definition, but I'm an academic and I work in circular economy, and also I'm involved in nature-based solutions for health and well-being. So I know, but I come from academics, so I don't know about others. And I write funding, so I know my definitions a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to use the hand raising function, or just put on your camera and put on your hand, just the live hand, if you want, if there's something to say. You can also use the chat if you'd rather just, or if you cannot use a microphone, so you can also put it. Okay, Gisela says that it meets her criteria. It's okay, Wendy.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
I feel it's a bit, yeah, there's bubbles that flow separately. I was wondering, Daniela, if there's some scheme which shows interconnectedness between them, how they are related or overlapping.
Yeah, I have other slides that come up next, but I think this is a huge opportunity also, that the fields are overlapping. And for this specific call for the nature-based solutions for health and well-being, you have to address mainly all of those. So not exactly, but you have to really be careful to include environmental, social, and economic benefits in all these areas. I mean, you're not always able to include coastal resilience. I mean, we in Austria, we do not have any coast, but this might be then exchanged with forest, for example, or other green aspects. So you need also involve the economic opportunities for green jobs, but this is always really vague. Yeah. So green jobs, I mean, this could be everything. But this aspect of green jobs is, of course, closely related to the economic outcomes of nature-based solutions, so that you can have a huge revenue out of it also. So this is, and also the green space management. This also involves jobs, and everything with research and education and policy also includes green jobs, more or less. So I wonder how my job then also could be involved in this section, green jobs. I mean, I'm an environmental health expert, but is this a green job? I mean, I do a lot with nature and forests, but actually medicine is not included in this array of jobs. So maybe this is also interesting, how we see our position, our role in society, in education and science in the future, if we do something in this area. So I think this also philosophically in a way.
Yeah, and if I can add on this, I think it's also how we see impacts, direct or indirect. Yeah, like I don't live on the coast, but there's small river next to my house and it flows into ocean, no? So indirectly what I do, even in very inland, it will affect big ecosystem and even planet, no? Or as you say, for green jobs, yes, it's how we do, even if we are not involved in nature-based solutions directly, whatever job we do, what is the environmental footprint of our job, no? How we take green aspects in every decision of our daily work. So I think there's like a lot of hidden layers, but they should not be neglected, no? It's always, everything is interconnected and affects in the end. Maybe difficult to quantify.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm a really huge fan of the One Health principle from the HWO, because we see that we only can stay healthy and sound as humans if everything around works out well, like the animals and the nature also. I think most of you know the principle that One Health includes environmental health, animal health, and human health, and they're interconnected. And I think you might also address this if you talk about your ideas of indirect effects like carbon footprint and all these things. Everything we do has some effect on something, and mostly it's the environment that we use and misuse, more or less. And Wendy tells us in the chat, in a solar punk future world, all jobs would be green jobs. Yeah. But I think it will last a long time that the medicine, I mean, the classical approach to medicine will see itself as green. But yeah, I'm working on it here, at least here in Austria at the Medical University. So. Interestingly, from this definition, it also said that nature-based solutions should help to build resilience, and resilience is also a term that is used in many, many different ways, because you say a forest is resilient if to climate change if it is a mixed forest in comparison to a monoculture, for example, but resilience is also a huge term in psychology and sociology, because it means that we are stress resistant and you can build resilience. This is also a focus of many coaches, life coaches, that tell you that you have to do some exercises to build up resilience. And it's also really interesting how this word in only some years became so immensely popular. So this is sorry. Yeah. This is another slide where you have some of these aspects more interconnected, and that nature-based solutions bring multiple benefits to address several challenges at the same time, and this makes it also so, yeah. Powerful, I would say, that if you interact with one of these pillars, then you could change some others, as we just discussed. So and for us also, especially the health aspect is the most important. But if you do not have, for example, good food and good water, then health is also reduced. So everything is connected here. And you see, interestingly, that also the European Commission, and this is one of major take-home messages, is also focusing on biodiversity. Above all, I would say, if you see this figure here. Here are some examples of what can be nature-based solutions. Just as pictures. There's no activity here, but you can imagine that people walking here and enjoying here their recreational time, especially if you see these green areas and the urban areas, urban forest areas here. And what you can learn from these pictures from one view is that a lot of things are also enhancing attractiveness of urban gray spaces, so that you use green and blue spaces also to increase well-being just by being more pleasant. And especially for the green roofs, the climate change mitigation effect is obviously. And maybe you do not know this one, because there is a new platform, an open web platform for ecosystem services and natural capital and nature-based solutions. You can, if you do not know it, just hop on Opla and have a look of all the things that coming up. That have already been invented and published, and things that are now in the pipeline. And if you are working in this area, I think this is a really useful tool from an European perspective, because you have a platform, and this is a living platform, and people giving things in it. And it's also good for networking and see what is going on and what people are doing and all this stuff. So if you would like to use it, I think it's great. And I wanted to share this with you if you do not know it. I also just came across it some weeks ago, so it's also not so. I'm not so familiar with this because it was not advertised or something like this. Do you know Opla? Have anyone already? Yeah, okay, some of you. Okay. So I think this was it for my slides. So I'm here again. Yeah, what do you think about the topic? Should we go into some aspects, or would you, Katrina, what would be the next point on the agenda?
Well, I would welcome people to, if there are any thoughts that came out of this, to just open the floor for that. I know I had one thought, and just hear from, we can keep it here in this small group. So let's first open the conversation to, if you had any questions for Daniela, if you had any comments or counter arguments, feel free to raise your live hand or virtual. Otherwise, can I just raise my counter argument? I thought of, you talked about resilience. It's something that I'm working on a lot, really on the mental resilience of people with the support of nature. And I cannot help but to think of Krishnamurti's famous saying, "It is no sign of health to be well adjusted to sick society." So I have to ask, when we talk about resilience, is that being well adjusted?
You mean if we do exercises to increase our resilience from a psychological point of view, that we just adjust to the sick society? So,
in a way, because, well, you also said that resilience is about, it's in the ecosystems. So we cannot anymore talk about sustainability, actually, because that's an old word. There's so many things are going wrong that we have to regenerate rather than keep the status quo, what sustainability is actually suggesting. But so things have to move there. We have to do this regenerative practices, but at the same time, we need to increase resilience in people. And I'm just thinking that, are we clear on these definitions of what should they be resilient towards? I'm not sure if I'm making sense.
Yeah, I have spent a lot of time to get familiar with resilience, because I came across it some years ago by in the course of a project for climate change mitigation in urban areas. And it was not about people, it was about urban areas. And then I found out that the word resilience is extremely pushed in the COVID-19 crisis, because this is the word you read all the time. People have to be more resilient to be better coping to the disease and so on. And I think it's also really interesting just to look on the term, how it's evolving and how it's spreading, and how sustainability is pushed away or accompanied by. Often you have resilient and sustainable cities, for example. So this is really interesting. And as I said before, I think definitions are really important so that everyone knows what he or she is talking about. There are different constructs and stages of resilience for coaches, for example, that want to push people increasing their resilience and being more stress resistant. But it's more or less also a psychological trait, a personality trait that people have have or have not in different levels. So if we see it from a more societal point of view, and I think, Katrina, this is what you mean, that we have to see the more holistic view to talk about stress reduction and making people more happy and healthier for long-term perspective, so the people get older but healthy. It's also a really valid point. It's a good counter argument to think about how society should be changed and how urban areas should be retrofitted to be more green or blue to capture all these aspects I showed you in the figure, because I really think it's a huge opportunity that so many things are influenced by nature.
Thank you. Vitalia, do you have anything to add? You always do. I trust you.
Yeah, for me, if we really want to be serious, about this discussion, I agree with Daniela that we have to go into definitions. I think not one definition, but probably, all spectrum of definitions. And for me, the first thing is to define what is health, So for me, it's a really kind of point of departure, and I think it links to Katrina's question too. What we are referring to and what are we aiming to, So Daniela, I would like to hear your insights as medical doctor and public health specialist. How would you define health? Maybe even more from personal point of view, because I think most of us, we know health definition of WHO. If you Google, it will jump in 1 second. But how do you understand health with your life experience, maybe your professional experience, more personal insight, with all baggage and all knowledge that you carry in you?
Thank you for this question. It's really also some question that is raised a lot. And if you want to hear my personal experience, then you are very welcome, because I have some questions in myself also for this aspect. I use the HWO definition a lot, because it is what public health experts do. They just point out, okay, you have to be healthy, but you also have to be mentally healthy, and you have to be fit, and you have to feel healthy for yourself. So it's also a kind of where is your status? Where do you stand, and what do you perceive as healthy and not healthy? And I also like the idea that we are in every stage of our life sick and healthy at the same time, because our cell defense is always working. And there are also some pathogenic cells that have to be removed, and everything is a constant fight between staying healthy and being sick. So it's really a fluid status. And I think this is something that we do not see when we do medical education. So that we also define, we like to define a disease. We would like to give the patient a prescription of a medication, and we would like to do some operation, some surgery. But it's really not always the case. And we see this a lot in psychosomatic diseases, because you do not have any measurement, you do not have any parameter in the blood that is changed, but the people do feel sick. So it's really also personal, but you do not learn this in medical studies, that the people are not always go into boxes, more or less. Yeah, and I think a lot about what we will, how we define disease when a person is diagnosed with a disease. Let's say blood pressure, high blood pressure. Yeah, you give the person medication, some drug, and the blood pressure is normal. Is the person still a patient with high blood pressure? Yes or no? And this is also for other things like autoimmune diseases. If you give the patient some medication that interacts with the immune system, then the disease progress stops. But and there are no signs and there are no symptoms anymore. But is this patient still suffering from some, I don't know, arthritis or something like this? So I really think this is something interesting, because you change the diagnosis by giving some drug. But if you would remove the drug, maybe the problem will occur. So, but I do not know what you think about this idea. I'm thinking about it for a longer time now, because I do not know how people perceive themselves if they are not feeling any symptoms. My picture is sometimes freezing, but I think you can hear me. No? Yeah? Okay. Bad internet connection.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Reminds me a bit also same about resilience and health. It's all about uncertainty, you know. Like Katrina, you were asking to what should be adapted. We don't know. I mean, the whole world is about uncertainty, and we try to control it and put it in models, but the same about health, we will never know. It reminds me to someone, a quote about cancer, by someone who recovered from cancer, who said like, you would never know you're cured from cancer until you get it back, until they diagnose again. Because you really never know when you're cured. But then she said something about healing, like she made a difference between healing and curing. So I also wanted to Daniela, like, is there like a difference for you of being cured and being healed?
Usually we say being cured, because healing is something more from the psyche and more, yeah, could be misinterpreted. But in medicine, it's about curing something. So we often came across such terms like healing forest or something like this. But it's not a curing forest. So this is my personal impression. I'm not we are here in Austria not native speakers in English, but we would say it's curing. Is it helpful? What do you think, Wendy? This?
Can you repeat again the last sentence?
What do you think? Do you heal persons or do you cure disease, more or less?
That's a good question. I think I ask you because I don't know myself very well. I think healing is like something, well, maybe, okay, but then we have to talk about like maybe Western philosophies and like Western science. Like I feel like maybe curing is indeed something that belongs to Western science and Western medicine. And healing, I always like, but this is like my personal attestation. I didn't do like a review of all things, but I feel healing is like sometimes a word I would hear more in non-Western knowledge, or where they talk about healing relationships, or like it's more, I guess, about the relational, maybe I'm now making up something. I feel I'm improvising now. Well, maybe curing is indeed like a very Western word. Yeah, I like that trend also, like the process and the mark. Like being cured is a mark, and healing, I don't think it will ever be markable.
Yeah, I like this idea of a process. Yeah. You always say if you have a flu, then with medication you need 7 days for healing, and without you need 1 week. So I think that's a good summary of the process of being healthy again.
So can we say if people get prescribed a forest, I mean, like now we're talking, for example, in Canada about these prescriptions to national parks. So would you say, how is it happening? Like, is it like to cure or to heal? Going to the national park, being prescribed to go to national park?
I would definitely say it's healing. It's a process, and it's also more holistically with the 5 senses and with mindfulness-based practices and all this stuff. So it's so, and it's not standardized, and you do not have these classical randomized controlled trials that people nowadays want to achieve, but you cannot do it probably like in drug studies, pharmacological studies in hospitals, because you cannot blind forest environment and all this stuff. So I think it's healing.
I would say Kat is, or first of all, Ingrid was showing her hand, so please.
Yeah. Hi, I really like what you were saying about this idea of us being sick and healthy at the same time through every stage of life. And I think that if that idea, I'm a clinical psychologist, and that idea could impact really well on mental health, because people tend to have taken on a narrative from medical health that I need to be cured. So, you know, I'll have 10 sessions of therapy and it's going to fix this problem. And this, you know, a lot of what I need to do in my work is to be educating people about process. But they come with a very medicalized idea about illness and health, and it's it can be very counterproductive and very on the other hand, people get very hard on themselves. So this would link to the resilience debate as well. You know, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this on my own? Why aren't I getting better? Very resistant to any kind of pharmacological help. So it's complicated, the relationship between medicine and mental health and psychology. And I think this narrative that you're talking about would be so helpful to be as an influence around mental health.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. I think it's especially in psychotherapy, you cannot go without such a deep understanding of healing processes, and it's called salutogenesis. You might know this. So this concept of a fluid status between being healthy and sick, and to frame the process of healing or the getting cured from the perspective of the health aspect, not focusing on disease, focusing on health like all the Asian cultures do. We do not do this, and it's interesting, coming back to our topic for prescribing nature, that now this Shinrin-yoku idea originating from Japan is coming to Europe, where the culture is so different. And now the the world is globalized, and now all these things come back to us. And on the other hand, in the Asian countries, the digitalization makes the people sick, because they sit all the time and all have the smartphones in their hands, and not going in the forests anymore. And we do the other thing now. We do digital detox and we do forest bathing in Europe.
I see also Kat has added a comment about the definitions, and healing is more the holistic, so body and mind. And that's perhaps something that is also interesting to think about, how we should be moving more towards this holistic idea of body mind rather than body and mind. Anyone else with something to add here? Otherwise, I would ask about the articles. We sent a number of articles to read, to just get the conversation going. And maybe I would just open the floor to thoughts that came out of those. I know I had a lot of notes that I made for myself, for questions, unanswered questions, more questions. So maybe we can open the floor for that. Emmy still says, stop saying I'm sick, but I'm saying I'm healing. Exactly, it's just another way of looking at it.
Yeah, does anyone feel like starting and sharing something that came out from these articles? Or I don't know, maybe who did read? Maybe people couldn't have time also. That's fine too. I mean, if we didn't read, maybe we can a little bit turn differently conversation. I don't know. Could you lift your hand if you read articles? Or so I see Emmy read. Okay, so Emmy, would you like to start? And Elena?
This
Yeah.
is one of the articles about prescriptions you shared with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe not everyone received too, because sometimes we're a bit chaotic, and we have newsletters, correspondence, and we have then private, unofficial, informal networks that we share, and we invite people from different corners and different.
These articles were shared in the IFTDays newsletter, and the reason why everything is centralized there because of this chaoticism anyway, otherwise. So everything is shared in the newsletter to keep it from becoming chaotic. But Emmy, you also work with a doctor who prescribes forest bathing through you. So can you?
Yeah, I read the article, and I immediately sent it over to my doctor. He's a new doctor, so I don't know him that well, but I feel like he's very okay. And he wrote me an answer that he would like to prescribe nature just by sending people to my work as forest bathing. So it's really fantastic, actually, that it's so easy fixed, that I just wrote him a mail, and he wrote back that it was very interesting, and he also believes in nature as a healing thing. And I was talking to him. I had to see him when I visited him with my daughter, and we had a short conversation about how less nature he's seen in his education. Because he like heard like half an hour about the benefits of nature for mental and physical health, and it's so new to him. But yeah, it was like a very easygoing way of having him as a doctor on my side to bring people to nature from a doctor. So that is my experience, and I'm so thrilled about it, so happy about it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Amy. Maybe I can add few words. What is this nature prescription? At least how it's being portrayed in the media. So basically, as I said, UK was playing very strong role in this journey because the public health deteriorated hugely in last decade in UK, and they couldn't afford basically any longer to pay to cover healthcare costs. And there was all work coming how communities could take in charge some ill people, especially with people having mental health problems. So there was huge work done in community support. And then indeed what Daniela explained, that there's this nature-based solutions for health field being developing. And doctors also saw opportunity that some costs could be reduced by sending people to nature. So for example, we could take like sleeping pills. In Belgium, there are huge prescriptions of sleeping pills and antidepressants. And one of the policy ways would be to build infrastructure in healthcare system that people go every day, like for 30 minutes or 120 minutes walk, and that would diminish sleeping pills consumption. So basically they would sleep better because of being in fresh air, because of moving, because interacting with nature. And then this nature prescription, I think it's kind of also creativity comes there. It's done in different ways. Some doctors, they really take like chemical drug recipe and write on this form that, you know, like in the end of consultation, I prescribe you for 4 coming weeks to walk every day 60 minutes in the park. I don't know if they notice distance, maybe it's not, I think there's all variables also, it varies depending on health condition of person and on creativity of doctor, but this is the idea. And I think they're all thinking it's really like also very much money driven, how to reduce consumption of drugs and for insurance companies, all these healthcare costs. And coming back to Daniela's evoked things, probably it's also about linked to sustainability and climate change and biodiversity protection. So it would be also about reducing taking car, that car taking could be replaced by walk to work, or it's really in different ways, so it interlaps with bigger goals from a starting point of improving health and reducing medicines consumption. So this is how I see. I don't know if someone wants to share own perspective, how you see these nature prescriptions, because I think there is no definition as such yet.
There's Marina and Ingrid. So Marina, maybe go ahead.
Yes, I just had a thought about this prescription, because I'm just wondering, do people just like get an order kind of to walk 30 minutes in the park? Or do they have someone to guide them in some way to experience nature? Because I think that maybe some people are maybe experience nature very very well because they're used to it, maybe, but some people don't use their senses in the same way to experience nature. So I'm just wondering if there are any how does it work, because I'm pretty sure that people have different experiences, and some people have maybe never experienced nature, so maybe it will be harder for them to get the same results.
Should I answer to this, or should we collect some questions? Or what should we discuss this?
We could, I could park it here, put the questions, I could write them down and see.
Ingrid was next. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Marina.
Yeah, for me, this is a very important question, because I think you would have, and I'm talking from my experience of referring people to doctors or psychiatrists, you will always have the group of people who just can't connect with this idea at all, and who want a cure, and I think at times really need something immediate and helpful. And then you would have people who would rather go for an option like this. But I think the majority of the people are going to be in the middle somewhere. And I think there's very important work to be done in how this is communicated, in using the evidence-based work, because that's really important for some people. And there's a lot around nuance, you know, that some people in a crisis or an extreme situation with sleep, for example, would feel too frightened, for example, to go to the woods for a walk. So for me, I think, I mean, I'm thinking as I'm speaking here, I think there would be a lot of work, we would benefit from a lot of work around a very nuanced assessment of the person and what they're grappling with and what they're able to do at a particular time. And I think it was Marina, the question of guides, certainly, you know, it's something that Emmy's describing, I would see as really helpful. I think that would be a lot easier for a lot of people than just simply going off on their own. But it's very individual, and I think it needs to, yeah, I'm thinking about assessment actually, when to bring this in, how to bring it in, what kinds of things work with different people. And that's going to apply to the majority of your population, I think.
I thank you for that comment, Ingrid. I also wrote that down because it's very connected to the one of Marina, or it's basically the same thing. And what is the risk? I would like to ask you, because this is something that came to me, is what are the risks then if we just prescribe nature and without going into detail? So imagine that this starts happening very much and people come up with their own interpretations of what this means. What are the implications?
Who are you asking?
Everyone.
Well, I can, an example, so this is something I would do in my practice. It's something I would suggest to people. And I suppose I could have a situation where someone would go and do it, and actually it has generated more anxiety and fear. So that would happen very seldom, because I would know the person quite well and I would be listening out for that. But certainly that's something that has happened, that there was something about being alone outside that generated particular phobias and fears of this person that had actually been quite dormant for some time. So it was helpful because then we could work on those things. But, you know, I think a GP who's doing a 20-minute consultation, you know, it's, yeah, I mean, I'm getting into specifics, huh? And I'm working with mental health issues in particular. So, but that's an example for me.
Anything else? I'm looking at the chat here. Wendy's saying sometimes going to a forest can be a trigger. New forest can be also raising anxiousness. New trails, new beings.
Yeah, an expert could be like a guide or like some other person who already has been there. But I notice sometimes, like, and also often new places, I sometimes delay visiting a new forest because I'm sometimes afraid for the unknown. So for me, which is interesting because I met many forests, but still you never know what you can meet. Like when I moved to Norway, I also sure a bit anxious. I'm still a bit anxious because Norwegian forests, they're like much more other animals we don't see in Belgium. So it makes me a bit anxious to just go in the forest where I know there can be maybe bears. Because I just don't know. Yeah. And having a guide or someone knows, and then I can go alone often. It's often, I guess, I need to be introduced. It's like meeting a person. I like to be introduced to that new person.
That's something that Emmy is saying as well in the comments, that when you go with a guide, you can then do it on your own as well, but you need to be introduced to what can be done, especially for people who are new to not only forest, but maybe looking at the forest in a different way, or doing these kinds of invitations or exercises in if you talk about Forest Mind. And then Katrin says that a prescription alone can be difficult for people, and they might not then follow the prescription actually. So it could be a lost chance, basically. My comment was that we might be shifting the responsibility too much for the client or the patient, saying, well, you got the prescription, but if you don't know what to do with it, again, it's a lost chance, and then it's not very effective. In one of the articles they were talking about, it needs to be effective, but how do we measure that then? And is it for the specific ailment that you are looking for some sort of help from nature, or what is how do we measure the effectiveness then? It's just a thought. I'm looking at the chat and the comments there. Again, initially going with a guide and with a prescription, and then continuing it on your own. There's a lot of things in the chat. Yeah, like Ingrid was saying, Katrin is also saying about the difference in who this is for. So there has to be a diversity of what the prescription contains. What is it about? What is it that you're doing there? So it's not one size fits all at all. And then we get to a good question as well. Do we need to be a psychologist as a guide? What are the requirements for the guide, basically? And then we can get to the never-ending discussion about definitions of forest bathing and forest therapy and therapy in the forest. And that kind of conversation is still ongoing.
Yeah, if someone feels to share what this efficient or effective intervention would be for you, how would you evaluate personally, as a guide or as participant who simply went into nature? Any ideas how from personal point of view you would evaluate? Maybe successful, I don't know, I don't like this word success, but successful intervention. Daniela.
Oh, I think Vivian had her hand up. Please. You're muted, or we can't hear you at least. You're not muted, but we cannot hear you. I see her typing. Oh, okay, doesn't work. Well, maybe you can write it in the chat, and maybe Daniela, you can answer in the meantime.
Yeah, I'm impressed by all your good questions in the chat, and it's really about this issue. We have so many different approaches to what prescribing nature would be. And we know the effects of nature, and we know that there are differences between being alone in a forest or being in a guided tour. For example, most of the forest guided tours are with more people, like a group of people, and then the social interactions are more in focus. Whereas if I go alone in the forest, I have my senses more on air, so to say, because I'm not so disturbed. For forest therapy, for example, or forest bathing, people say, do not bring your dog. Because if you want to be, you feel your inner self in the forest and bath in the atmosphere of the forest, it's not good to have a constant noise and constant distractions. And so from my perspective, if we talk about forest therapy, it should be with a guide. Because from the things you would like to achieve, you need someone trained and who knows how to achieve those things. So this is a conceptual point of view. If you go in the forest on your own, you have spare time that you can use how you want to use it. And one of the guided forest therapy aims could be, nevertheless, that the people then are able to go alone in the forest and have some sustainable outcome for their lives. And I think it's always good to keep in mind that people do not get obese between Christmas and New Year's Eve. They get obese between New Year's Eve and Christmas. So we should train people to have a longer term perspective. And most of the diseases we are approaching with forest therapy are longer term issues. Like you have people with depression, you have people with some with overweight, you have people with high blood pressure and so on, diabetic people. Yeah, these are diseases that are lifestyle related and that can be reduced when the lifestyle is more healthy for a longer term. And of course, people get older, so it's always good to think about how you can people get active. And this is from a public health perspective, for me, the most valuable thing about prescribing nature, that people stand up, go out their doors and they walk and they do some activity. And physical activity is what people makes healthy and increase their well-being. We know this since ancient times, but people sit too much in school education, in offices. Even we sit here. So it's one of the most important things. And if people are fitter from a physical activity point of view, they feel better and they are more resilient to stress and they can cope better with their stressful life. So this ends. Some 10 minutes ago, there was the question on, or this issue on sleep problems. There are studies out there that shows if you go out to nature, you sleep better. It's because you have more air and you're not so stressed. And it's all about, from my perspective, light therapy. People don't tell you this, but if you do forest therapy, you also do light therapy because you're exposed to natural light, and this is what helps you to sleep like a baby.
Thanks, Daniela. I'm just going to read Vivian's comment also for the recording. Prescriptions. It raises a question: do we need to be psychologists as a guide? How do we differentiate with the offer? That this is the one that Daniela also answered to. And Vivian goes further to say, I work as a coach for students in international business at University of Applied Science. I offer forest bathing sessions to students aged 18 to 22, part of a broader program, Inner Landscaping. We see positive reactions of students. They are very enthusiastic, more aware of their inner world. I'm grateful this is integrated in education as it is not only about knowledge. Anyone? Thanks, Vivian.
But yeah, I just had a nice feeling that, you know, as I'm listening to this conversation, it reminds me a bit of where mindfulness was 20 years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago. It was something that particular groups were talking about. It was not something that was known in the general parlance, if I can say that. And, you know, it was something that had been practiced by very particular groups of people, but it was starting to move out into more general areas, and more people were being trained. And that feels like a very promising and exciting idea for me, that, you know, if we look at where mindfulness is now, everybody knows what mindfulness is. It's, you know, it's practiced and taught across broad spectrums of companies, organizations, government sectors, etc. So I would like to see in 20 years where this is. My feeling is that it will be very known and easily spoken about and integrated in many, many ways. It feels very exciting from what we see already happening.
Thank you, Ingrid. Vidalia?
Yeah, maybe I have a question to Ingrid and others who know more mindfulness, because my knowledge is very limited. From what I see in Belgium, mindfulness, I refer to stress reducing mindfulness. That is this standardized 8-week course that is now being offered by health professionals in hospitals. So in my way, how I see it, still stays locked in dark rooms. And okay, with COVID, it went into Zoom room, but it's still, this mindfulness doesn't move outside. I don't know, what are the reasons? Probably to stay in controlled environment. And yeah, I think that probably what differentiates mindfulness and forest therapy, that when we go to forest therapy, we go in also in the wild, in the way. We are meeting ticks that can transmit Borrelia. We are meeting trees that can fall on people. You know, this, I think, what Katrina referred about risks. So for me, it's like the main difference. I would like to ask if someone knows about mindfulness in nature. I know that in second edition of International Forest Therapy Days, we had Dortje from Copenhagen University, who was doing her PhD about mindfulness in outdoors, but we have probably to come back to her now. It's 4 years ago, but at that time it was very challenging to have mindfulness outdoors. So what would be your thoughts on this?
Daniela's hand.
Yeah, thanks for this aspect. I truly believe that mindfulness is partly integrated into most of how forest therapy is framed, because most of the exercises like body scan and all this stuff, and smelling and eating things and all these senses based exercises are directly coming from mindfulness based stress therapy program. And I think that you mentioned trees falling down and all these things. This is also something we should think about when we talk about making the forest a therapy room, because there are other risks, there are other requirements and so on. And I believe that everything that happens indoor in therapy, expect some surgery stuff or something, could also be done outdoors, not in the forest, but at least outdoors in a park, and be connected also to physical activity. Like if we do sessions in psychotherapy, for example, or other things that involve a lot of speaking, these things can be done while walking outside as well. So this could also be a new aspect of integrating nature-based solutions into therapeutical aspects and interventions. And the mindfulness movement, I think, is now mainstream, like is yoga, for example. And now we try, I think most of us try here to get nature, forest therapy and all this stuff also into mainstream. And maybe in 5 years, this round would be like 1,000 people. So yeah, I think the movement is also growing, like it was in the 70s with John Kabat-Zinn, who invented this mindfulness-based therapy. So I think we are now on a good wave, and this movement from nature-based solutions will also grow, especially. And this was the main reason why I showed you the slides from the European Commission, that you have the feeling that there is a lot of money in it, from research side, but also from development and implementation side. And all of us who work in education, tourism and stuff, we will profit from this movement, from the Green Deal.
I'm reading the chat again. So Alena is mentioning that there's also the environmental aspect. Thank you. I was waiting for this. Activities aimed at mindful connection with nature, noticing nature, not just spending time in nature, have, in addition to well-being benefits, the potential to lead to pro-environmental behavior. That's mentioned also in the articles that we shared with you. Actually, when I was reading this comment, I was also thinking about how about the environment itself? How about the pressure that we put on to the forest itself? And I know that guides themselves limit the groups smaller, but does somebody want to address the pro-environmental behavior aspect of Alena's comment?
Yeah, I think that's mostly the how I got into with you guys, because that's what is like the main goal for me, besides better health, of course, but also I think when people see that they get better health from nature and healthy environment, and they will also have more respect for living things and nature. And I'm pretty sure that I agree very much with Alina in this, because right now we have like a lot of people who don't know nature, who don't know species, but you can see I can see that when people begin to see like lichen or mosaic or like a moses or something or a tree, they get much more interested, and the more species they get to know, the more respect they get for nature as well, and they have like more mindfulness as well actually, because they get more their brain is so focused on one thing in nature that they can relax as well. So it's very interesting.
I muted myself. Daniela, is that a old hand or a new hand?
This was a new hand, thank you. I wanted to comment on the environment and knowing nature and the tree species, that it's interesting that you do not have to know anything about trees and plants and animal species in a forest or in nature to feel all the relaxing and positive aspects for health and well-being. So this is really interesting that you don't have to be a biologist to do nature therapy in any way. And I think this removes a lot of issues for psychologists or medical people, that they do not have to study biology to be in nature and to help people interact and engage with nature.
Yeah, thank you, Daniela. Very interesting reflection, which as a first reaction I have, like, I would contest. I would say it depends on level of knowledge. I think probably people who don't know nature at all, for them what you say, that would be valid, especially if they have guide, because guide indeed creates a lot of brings feeling of safety. And I think if you don't know, for me, there are like two reactions: or you are very afraid, or you are not afraid at all. And it's like, probably you refer to this group, that people who are not afraid at all. But I think this, depends on type of knowledge. Like, more knowledge you get about nature, also more you understand about risks. And probably there is kind of intermediate situation where you have knowledge but not enough of knowledge, and probably as a guide you would not dare to bring people to the forest that you don't fully know. You would not take responsibility because you don't know about species and you don't know about possible dangers that can occur during forest bathing session. So I would say that's kind of quite complex, what kind of knowledge guides you need, and people need to feel safe in the forest, because for me that feeling of safety is like baseline, where relaxation or opening to benefits of forest start. But I think it's very, very interesting reflection that probably merits one session in itself, because it's a very big question. You know, when we speak about safety, where safety, psychological safety, comes from. Does it come from inside? Does it come from our life experience? Does it come from our trauma or not trauma? You know, that's very, very colorful investigation.
Yeah, but I think this is really interesting to be addressed when people start to prescribe nature. So I think there might be a lot of insecurity out there in GPs, for example. What should do? Is it my obligation to care for the patient that goes in the forest and then has an accident, for example? So I think this is also not so easy and have to be addressed. And also the group size, if we go out with patients, how many people should I take? And usually in therapeutic clinics, there are at least 2 guides, because the people are patients and they might fall down or have some problem, psychological breakdown, whatever. So this is also a resource intensive task. We should not forget this.
Thank you for that. It's both Vitalia and Daniela really good comments, and I see also Emmy says smaller groups means more safety plus better for the environment, and Kat mentions, I think it's a balance. Understanding nature and potential risk could be covered by wilderness/nature, first aid, though I think what Daniela was also referring to is that we do not have to know the names of all the trees and the fungi, for example. And Emmy, as a guide, feels more safe when she knows about nature. I'm gonna have to continue on this topic.
Yeah, Indeed, yes. And I think it comes back to the very first question, what is health? Because WHO definition doesn't include yet spiritual health. And there was very big discussion, I think, initiated by Thailand, maybe 20 years ago, that was suspended, and maybe now it's opening again. So I think this aspect of spirituality, and nature as therapist's role was completely untouched in our discussion, and we sent wrong link also. So we will resend right link to the publication about that refers more to this reciprocal relationship with nature. So we receive from nature, yes, this beautiful beneficial health effects, what we as humans are giving back to nature in exchange. So I think that would be a really nice discussion for next time.
Yes.